The Silent Plea. The colony of Valar drifted quietly on the edge of the Orion Arm, a world of soft green skies and shining crystal towers. To outsiders it looked like peace, but inside its walls fear had taken root. Raiders had come, ruthless beings who cared for nothing but fire, blood, and plunder. The alien citizens huddled in the great hall as alarms screamed. Their leaders stood in silence, faces pale and eyes wide. The raiders were too strong. The defense ships had already fallen in the first hour. The skies above burned with flames as enemy craft rained destruction on every settlement. Ina, a council speaker, clutched the small transmitter in her trembling hands. It was the last working beacon on the planet. The others had been destroyed or jammed. This one carried a single choice, a single hope. She looked at her fellow counselors, and they all knew what it meant. "Do not use it," whispered Torek, another elder. "Better to die by the fire than to bring them here." The room grew colder at his words. Everyone knew who they were. Everyone knew what it meant to call across the void. The galaxy had a name for them, whispered like a curse. The Deathworlders. For centuries, every council, every empire, every fleet had warned against them. Humanity, the race from the violent world of Earth, a place so dangerous that even its plants and animals were considered lethal by galactic standards. Humans were fighters, survivors, predators in the shape of men and women. The galaxy had hidden from them, kept them out, warned colonies never to speak with them, and yet here they were, dying. And here was the transmitter. Ina's hand shook. She thought of the children crying in the shelters. She thought of the towers falling. She thought of her people begging for help. "We have no choice," she whispered back. "If not them, then who will save us?" The elders argued. Their voices rose in panic. Some shouted that it was madness, others that it was the only path. Outside, the roar of explosions grew louder. The city shook as another tower collapsed into dust. At last, silence fell in the council hall. Every eye turned to the sky as another blast lit the horizon in crimson fire. Then, one voice, weak but steady, broke the silence. "Send it," said Elder Varus, his eyes filled with tears. "We cannot die like this. Let history judge us, but let our children live." Ina pressed the button. The beacon came alive. A pulse of light surged through the transmitter and shot into the stars. The signal was small, weak, fragile. But in the cold void of space, it was carried. A cry of desperation. A plea for salvation. The signal moved across the endless dark. Every moment that passed felt like an eternity. No one in the council spoke, no one breathed. It was done. There was no turning back, and as they sat in silence, the weight of what they had done pressed on their hearts. They all knew the legends. The Deathworlders did not forgive. The Deathworlders did not forget. If humanity came, it would not only be the raiders who trembled, the whole galaxy would shake. Ina closed her eyes, praying that someone, anyone, besides humanity would hear the call. But deep down, she knew the truth. The galaxy had turned its back on them. The empires had abandoned them. Only one race would answer now. Above the colony skies, the battle grew worse. Raiders laughed as they torched the fields and broke through the shelters. The alien civilians screamed in terror as the end closed in. The defenders fell back, weapons useless against the merciless storm. In the council chamber, the leaders listened to the faint hum of the beacon as it pulsed into the void. Ina stared at it, whispering a final word. "Please." Out in the black ocean of stars, far beyond their sight, anshas and listening posts stirred. Forgotten relay stations flickered to life. Old Terran codes awoke in silence. A long-sleeping system turned its eyes to the galaxy once more. And in that moment, somewhere deep in the darkness, something vast and terrible moved. Engines that had not roared in a generation came alive. Metal hulls older than empires shivered as power returned. Hidden fleets in forgotten docks blinked awake. The colony of Valar did not yet know it, but their desperate cry had been heard. And the ones who heard it were not saviors of mercy. They were Deathworlders. The galaxy had feared this day. The empires had prayed it would never come, but now it was the forgotten signal, far away from Valar, beyond the eyes of empires and beyond the mapped lanes of trade. A silent machine stirred in the darkness. It floated alone, near a dead star, its metal frame coated in dust and drifting ice. For centuries it had waited. patient as stone. It was a Terran relay station, one of many scattered long ago when humanity still spoke to the galaxy. The empires had forgotten them, or perhaps they had hoped never to see them awake again. But the machines remembered. Their orders were simple: listen, record, and if the call came, deliver it home. The signal from Valar reached the station like a whisper, weak, trembling, almost broken by distance. But the relay did not forget its duty. With a groan of ancient gears and a hum of reactors that had not burned in decades, it came alive. Beacons lit across its surface, antennas unfolded like the wings of some ancient beast. The SOS was copied, amplified, and then launched deeper into the abyss, each pulse carrying the desperate words of the aliens who had pressed the button. Their voices were not heard by any other empire. The great powers of the galaxy ignored the faint cries, too weak, too distant, not worth their time. But to humanity, no call was too weak. The signal found its way through the forgotten web, crossing from one silent sentinel to the next, each one awakening as if roused from sleep. Dust fell from old hulls, reactors sparked. One by one, the network lit up. Far on the edge of Sol's hidden frontier, the message reached its final destination. Buried under the ice of a frozen moon, deep within an old Terran command center, the signal arrived. Red lights flared to life, alarms rang in the empty halls, and for the first time in 100 years, the voice of another world reached human ears. Inside the command center, a lone watcher stirred. His name was Commander Hale. His uniform was plain, but his eyes were sharp. For decades he had guarded silence. He had watched the void and seen nothing. Until now, he listened as the message repeated, a desperate alien voice begging for aid. He heard their fear. He heard the name of the raiders. He heard the word, please. For a long time, Hale said nothing. His fingers tapped against the cold steel of the console. Humanity had not answered the galaxy for generations. The empires had cast them out, calling them Deathworlders, monsters, cursed. And yet, now they begged for help. Hale opened a channel to the fleet command. His words were sharp, steady. We have received an SOS, identification, Valar colony, attack status, critical, estimated casualties, high, awaiting orders. Silence followed. Then a voice like thunder answered, the voice of Admiral Saren, one of the oldest warriors of Earth. Relay confirmed. Fleet command acknowledges. Wake the fleet. Deep below the ice, massive hangar doors cracked open for the first time in a century. Snow and dust blew into the void as the ground itself shook. Beneath, warships long asleep stirred awake. Their hulls bore the scars of old wars. Their cannons were silent but waiting. Their engines, when lit, burned like suns. One by one, the ships lifted. Dark silhouettes rose into the starlit sky. Colossal destroyers, dreadnoughts, and carriers, their shadows. He was blotting out the frozen light. Humanity's fleet was no myth. It was real, and it was alive. The galaxy thought humanity gone, silent, buried in history. But here, in the shadows, they had waited. They had grown stronger, quieter, deadlier. They had watched while the galaxy mocked, and now someone had dared to call them. Commander Hale watched the first ship break orbit. The engines thundered, shaking the moon itself. He whispered, almost to himself, they wanted to be left alone, but they asked for us, and now they will see what it means to summon Deathworlders. Back on Valar, the alien council huddled in silence. They did not yet know that their signal had been received. They did not yet know what had begun. Above them, the sky still burned. Raiders laughed as they carved through the last defenses. Children cried, families prayed, and in the depths of space, in the frozen dark, humanity moved. The forgotten signal had been heard. The Deathworlders had awakened. The gathering storm, the colony of Valar, lay in ruins. The sky was thick with smoke. The raiders had carved their way across the surface, leaving fire and broken bodies in their path. Yet in the council chamber silence reigned. The elders sat frozen, listening to the faint hum of the beacon. No one spoke. Every council member carried the same thought. What if the humans heard us? Torek broke first, his voice sharp and filled with fear. Do you understand what we have done? If the Deathworlders are coming, It will not stop with the raiders. It will not stop with Valar. Their shadow will spread, and every world will tremble. Ina's hands clenched at her side. She had pressed the transmitter. She had sent the call. She wanted to believe it was the right choice. Yet even now she wondered if she had cursed them all. "The raiders would have killed us," she said quietly. "If help comes, we cannot question from where it comes." But the others argued. Voices rose like thunder. Some shouted that they had doomed the colony. Others demanded they destroy the transmitter before it was too late. The chamber shook as another blast tore through the city outside. Far beyond their skies, across the galactic lanes, whispers had already begun. Traders spoke of a signal that had vanished into the void. Patrols swore they saw movement at the edges of forgotten sectors. The great empires ignored it at first, dismissing it as rumor, but rumor grew into fear. In the halls of the Galactic Council, envoys murmured nervously. Old warnings returned to the surface, words that had been buried in history. Do not awaken Earth. Do not summon the Deathworlders. Yet even as the council debated, ships were already moving. Silent black hulks of Terran design slid through the void, unseen by the galaxy's eyes. Their engines burned without light, leaving no trace behind. The fleet moved like predators through the shadows. On the bridge of the dreadnought Iron Resolve, Admiral Saren stood with hands clasped behind his back. His eyes studied the stars. His crew worked in silence, trained for this very moment. "Course set," a navigator reported. "ETA to Valar system, 30 hours. The Admiral gave a single nod. His voice carried across the bridge, calm and steady. "Inform the fleet. No signals, no warnings. We arrive as ghosts." The words spread like fire through the Terran armada. 1,000 ships moved in perfect silence, united under one banner. For decades they had waited. For decades they had been called monsters. Now the galaxy itself had invited them back on Valar. The raiders were celebrating. Fires burned in every quarter of the city. Loot was piled in transports. Prisoners were dragged into cages. To them, it was another easy conquest, another nameless world falling before their blades. But one raider ship caught something strange, a distortion on its long-range. "Scanners?" The pilot frowned, tapping the controls. At first he thought it was an error, but then the shapes appeared. Too large, too steady, too many. The raider's laughter died in his throat. He whispered a curse as his screen filled with cold metal shadows, ships, massive and countless, closing in from the dark. His warning was cut short when the transmission broke. In the council chamber of Valar, Ina looked up. Her breath caught as the walls shook, not from another raid, but from something deeper, heavier, the sound of engines that did not belong to the raiders, the kind of sound that shook the bones and rattled the soul. "They are here," she whispered, voice trembling. The others turned to her, eyes wide with terror. Torek nearly collapsed against the table. No, it cannot be. Not them." But it was too late. The gathering storm had reached their skies. The Deathworlders were coming. The arrival of the fleet. The skies above Valar had burned for 2 days. Columns of smoke twisted into the heavens, and the ground was scarred with fire. The raiders circled the planet like vultures, their ships fat with stolen treasure and captives. For them, it was victory. For the colony, it was the end. But then, the stars changed. At first, it was only a shadow, a distortion against the endless night. Raiders laughed, thinking it a storm in their sensors. But the shadow grew larger, thicker, until it blocked whole constellations. One by one, points of light appeared, not the soft glow of distant suns, but the cold, steady burn of engines, dozens, then hundreds, then thousands. The Terran fleet had arrived. Colossal shapes emerged from the void, dreadnoughts the size of cities, carriers that stretched like floating fortresses. Destroyers and frigates swarmed in formation around them. Their hulls were black iron and scarred steel. Some carried marks from wars the galaxy had forgotten, yet all of them burned with a single purpose. The largest ship broke through first, its shadow covering the burning colony below, on. Its hull was a single word written in Terran script, old and jagged. A word no alien could read, but all would learn to fear. Resolve. The raiders froze. For the first time in their lives, their prey did not run. Instead, monsters had come to hunt the hunters. Inside the council chamber, The leaders felt the walls tremble. The sound was not the chaotic whine of raider weapons. It was deeper, heavier, like the heartbeat of some ancient beast. Ina stumbled to the window. Her eyes widened as the sky filled with black steel. Her breath caught. They answered. Torek collapsed into his chair, his face drained of all color. No, it is death itself. Then, for the first time, the humans spoke. Across every frequency, across every ship and comms channel, a single message echoed. The voice was calm, steady, without rage, without mercy. You called for help. Humanity has answered. The words silenced the world. Raiders panicked. Prisoners fell quiet. Even the council could only stare. The Terran fleet moved without hesitation. Destroyers swept down like blades of fire. Their cannons roared, cutting through raider ships as if they were paper. Carriers opened their bays, unleashing waves of fighters that screamed through the sky, each one faster, sharper, deadlier than anything the raiders had ever faced. The raiders tried to run, engines lit as their ships broke formation, but the humans hunted them like predators. For every raider that fled, 3 more were cut down. Their wreckage burned bright across the sky. On the ground, the alien civilians stared upward as the impossible unfolded. Where there had been flames, now there was thunder. Where there had been despair, now there was silence. The Deathworlders had arrived, yet there was no celebration in the council. Ina pressed her hand to the glass, watching the Terran ships rain destruction on the invaders. She had to weep with relief, but fear tangled in her chest. She knew what the legends had said. The humans never came without cost. Down in the shelters, children asked their parents what the black ships were. Some said angels, others said demons. One elder whispered the truth. They are the Deathworlders, and the galaxy will never be the same. As the last raider ship exploded in fire, silence returned to Valor. But it was not peace. It was the silence of prey caught in the shadow of a predator. The silence before a question no one wanted to ask. Why had humanity truly come? The Deathworlders unleashed. The battle in orbit ended in minutes. The raiders who had come with fire and laughter now burned as wreckage in the black. Their screams silenced. Their fleets scattered. The sky above Valar was no longer a storm of raider ships, but a wall of Terran steel. Yet the humans did not stop. From the belly of the carriers, vast doors opened. The people of Valar watched as shapes emerged, not ships, but dropships. Black, angular, their engines roaring like thunder as they pierced the smoke-filled sky. The council stared from their chamber. Ina's breath trembled as she saw them descend. They are not leaving, she whispered. Her words chilled the room. On the ground, raiders still roamed, burning, looting, dragging captives through shattered streets. They thought the battle was theirs, until the dropships broke through the clouds. The first slammed into the ground like a meteor. Its doors hissed open, and from within stepped the Deathworlders, Terran Marines armored in steel exosuits, their visors glowing red. Their weapons were massive, brutal, built not for intimidation but for war itself. They moved with precision, no hesitation, no fear. The raiders opened fire. Blasts of plasma lit the ruins. But the humans did not fall. They advanced through fire, their armor absorbing the hits, their weapons answering with thunder. One Terran raised his rifle and fired. A single burst tore through 3 raiders at once. Another Marine threw a device that exploded with a shockwave, hurling enemies aside like leaves in a storm. The aliens of Valar watched from the shelters, eyes wide, hearts pounding. For the first time, they understood why the galaxy called them Deathworlders. Humans did not fight like soldiers, they fought like predators. Every movement was sharp, controlled. Every strike meant to kill. They did not waste bullets. They did not waste time. They were not defending. They were hunting. A group of raiders tried to flee through the ruins, but the Marines tracked them. Their exosuits allowed them to leap across collapsed buildings to smash through walls. The raiders screamed, but the humans gave no mercy. Within hours, the city streets changed. The fires of conquest were drowned beneath the storm of Terran war. Raider corpses lined the roads, their banners burned to ash, and where once there had been despair, now there was only silence broken by the heavy steps of armored boots. Ina and the council saw it unfold. Her heart warred between relief and terror. The raiders were gone. Her people lived. But she could not escape the truth. This was not aid. This was dominance. Humanity had not come as saviors. They had come as rulers of war. One counselor whispered what all feared: what happens when they turn their gaze to us? At the edge of the battlefield, a child broke free from the shelters, running toward the Terran Marines. The crowd gasped in horror. The Deathworlders would crush her, but instead, the lead Marine stopped, lowering his massive rifle. He lifted the child into his arms with surprising gentleness. The child looked up at the faceless visor, her small hand pressing against the cold metal. And for a moment, the Deathworlder stood still, silent. Then he carried her back to her mother and turned to Parosio. Way without a word. The people of Valar whispered, fear and awe tangled in every voice. The legends had told of monsters, but what stood before them was more complicated, more dangerous, perhaps more human. As the Marines regrouped, Admiral Saren's voice boomed across every comms line once again, calm and final. Your world is secure. The raiders are gone. You called for help, and the Deathworlders answered. But the message carried a weight, unspoken yet clear. Humanity had revealed itself. Humanity had shown what it was capable of, and the galaxy would never again be the same. The choice of the galaxy. The colony of Valar lay in silence. The raiders who had brought death and fire were gone. The skies were clear of enemy ships, yet no one celebrated. The people whispered in fear, their eyes lifted not to the heavens but to the black shadows that still hung there. The Terran fleet remained, vast and unmoving. Their warships orbited above the planet like silent judges. Engines glowed faintly, but their guns stayed ready. To the colony, they were not saviors. They were reminders. Humanity had returned. Inside the council chamber, arguments raged. Torix slammed his hand on the table. We have doomed ourselves, do you not see? We called them, and they came. They did not simply save us. They claimed us. From this day forward, Valar belongs to the Deathworlders. Ina shook her head, though her voice trembled. Without them, we would all be ash. Our children would be gone. Our cities destroyed. Perhaps we cannot choose our fate anymore, but at least we live to face it. The others whispered in fear. Each knew the stories. Each remembered the warnings. Humans never came quietly. Humans never left without changing everything they touched. Far across the stars, the news spread. Traders carried tales of the Black Fleet. Smugglers swore they saw Terran dreadnoughts slip through sectors. Thought empty. Whispers reached the Galactic Council, and for the first time in centuries, panic filled the Grand Chamber. The great empires sent envoys, their voices sharp with fear. Some called for war. Strike now before the humans gather strength. Others argued for caution. They already have strength. We must not provoke them. One senator, his voice shaking, spoke the words many feared to admit. We told ourselves they were gone. We told ourselves they were buried, but they have always been watching. And now, because one desperate colony called, the Deathworlders are awake again. Debates turned to threats. Threats turned to silence. None wanted to act. None wanted to be the first to face humanity. Meanwhile, on Valar, life returned slowly. Families crawled out from the shelters, walking through ruins that still smoked. They found their loved ones alive. They wept for those who were lost. And always, above them, the shadows of Terran ships remained. Children pointed to the sky with wide eyes, some in wonder, some in fear. One boy whispered to his sister, "They saved us." But she answered, "They are not here for us. They are here because we called." In the hidden chambers of the Terran flagship, Admiral Saren listened to the reports. His officers spoke of victory, of the colony secured, of raider fleets destroyed. Yet the Admiral's gaze was hard. He saw further than Valar. He knew the galaxy now stirred with fear. "They will not remain silent," Saren said at last. "The empires will choose soon. Either they will beg for alliance, or they will prepare for war, and either path will lead to fire." The officers nodded, their faces grim. They had not fought this battle for conquest. They had fought because the call had come. But they all knew what the galaxy believed, that humanity never fought without purpose. Back on Valar, the council gathered one final time. Ina looked across the chamber, her voice heavy. "We made the call, and the Deathworlders answered. Now the galaxy must decide. Will they see us as victims or traitors? Will they see humanity as saviors or destroyers?" No one answered. They could not, For beyond the smoke, beyond the stars, the galaxy trembled. Empires gathered their fleets, councils argued, spies whispered. Everyone asked the same question: do we fight the Deathworlders, or do we kneel? The choice of the galaxy had come, and no one was ready. The legacy of the SOS. The colony of Valar was quiet at last. The fires had been smothered. The raiders were nothing but ash drifting among the stars. The streets were broken, the towers cracked, yet life still clung stubbornly to the ruins. Families gathered in the open, whispering prayers of survival. Children clung to their parents, their eyes still fixed on the sky where black ships lingered like shadows. The people had expected liberation, celebration, freedom. Instead, they felt the heavy silence of uncertainty. The Deathworlders had not left. They had not spoken again. Their fleet simply hung above the planet, watching, waiting. Ina stood among the survivors, her voice carried across the broken square. We live because they came. Do not forget that. But even she could not shake the truth that pressed like a weight on her heart. The SOS had saved them, but at what cost? High above, on the bridge of the Resolve, Admiral Saren stood at the viewport, his hands clasped behind his back. He listened to the reports of rebuilding, of survivors found, yet his gaze never left the stars. Send the message, he said at last, his voice steady, unyielding. A comms officer turned. Which one, Admiral? The truth, Saren replied. Moments later, across the networks of the galaxy, a new broadcast began. The same voice that had silenced the raiders now echoed into every council hall, every capital, every hidden listening post. You feared us. You exiled us. You warned the stars never to call, but one world called, and we answered. Know this, the Deathworlders do not come as invaders, nor as slaves. We come because we were summoned. If the galaxy wishes to stand against us, then let it be so. If it wishes to stand beside us, then choose wisely. For we are awake now, and we will not sleep again. The message ended, but its echo remained. Worlds froze in silence. Empires shivered. Every ruler knew the balance of power had shattered. The galaxy's nightmares had risen. On Valar, the people gathered around a cracked screen to hear the words. Some wept in relief, others in terror. For them, the message was not distant. It was their fault. They had pressed the button. They had called the Deathworlders back into the light. In the shelters, a small child tugged at her mother's sleeve, her eyes wide, voice small. Mama, will they come again if we call? The mother looked at the sky where the Terran fleet floated like an endless wall. Her throat tightened. She knew the truth but feared to speak it. At last, she whispered, Yes, child, they will come. But remember, when the Deathworlders answer, nothing stays the same. As the fleet turned its engines, as the black ships began to fade back into the void, the colony of Valar stood in silence. The people did not cheer. They did not wave banners. They only watched, knowing they had witnessed the first step of something greater. The SOS had begun as a cry for help, but it had become something else, a spark, a warning, a promise, and as humanity vanished into the abyss once more, every world across the stars held its breath, for all now knew the truth. The Deathworlders had returned, and the galaxy would never sleep again.